Hey everyone, welcome back to another session of our CISSP study group. I'm B-Dubs and I'm pumped to dive into these topics today. Whether you're working hard to pass the CISSP exam or you just love diving into cybersecurity, you're in the perfect spot. I really appreciate your dedication and I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you. Last time, we dove into Domain 4, specifically Objective 4.1. If you missed it, no worries. I've got a playlist for you to catch up. I'll share the link in chat so you can watch it later at your own pace. Today we're tackling exam objective 4.2, secure network components. This is a big deal for the exam and honestly for real-world security too. We're talking about locking down everything that makes our network tick, from the physical cables to the sneaky decoys we can set up for attackers. It's all about building a fortress around our data and systems. So grab your monster, your notepad, or whatever keeps you going, and let's get into it. We're kicking things off with the big picture, network architecture. I want you to picture a medieval castle. It has multiple layers of defense, a moat, outer walls, inner walls, guards at checkpoints, and finally, the secure inner core. This is exactly how we design modern network architecture. Just like each part of the castle serves a specific defensive purpose, our network uses multiple security layers working together. We're going to explore how we build this digital fortress. The first big concept is defense in depth. Instead of relying on a single security measure, we layer multiple defenses, security policies, firewalls, encryption, access controls, and monitoring systems. If an attacker breaks through one layer, they still face several more. Next comes partitioning or segmentation. Imagine dividing our castle into separate wings. In networks, we create separate segments for different departments. For example, finance gets their own secure area, marketing another, research and development another. Each segment has its own security controls. Switches, routers, and firewalls all act as the guards between sections. If an attacker breaches marketing, they can't automatically access financial data. Network segmentation is one of our most powerful security tools. When we segment our network properly, we gain several important advantages. First, if malware somehow gets into our network, segmentation stops it from spreading freely. It's contained just within that segment. This is crucial for protecting our critical systems. We also make compliance much easier by isolating regulated data, like customer information, in specific protected segments. If we ever face a security incident, segmentation helps our response team by limiting how far an attacker can reach within our network. To put this segmentation into practice, we use three main technical approaches. First, we set up virtual LANs, or VLANs, to create logical divisions in our network. Then we implement access control lists, or ACLs, to carefully control what traffic can flow between these segments. Finally, we deploy next-generation firewalls that can perform advanced traffic filtering, giving us even more control over communication between segments. Modern environments bring new segmentation challenges. With cloud services, hybrid networks, and remote work, we need to think beyond physical boundaries. IoT devices need their own segments to protect sensitive systems from potentially vulnerable devices. But the principle remains the same here. Divide and protect, just like our castle's defensive layout. At the edge of our network fortress sits the network perimeter. Think of this as the castle's main gate. This is where our network meets the internet. A security best practice is to create a single controlled entry point where we can inspect all traffic coming in or going out. Just like having one heavily guarded gate is easier to defend than multiple entrances. Of course, larger organizations might need multiple entry points for redundancy or geographic distribution, but each one follows the same strict security controls. Now, I'm going to introduce you to an important guard, the Bastion host. Picture a heavily fortified guardhouse sitting in what we call the DMZ, or Demilitarized Zone. The DMZ is like a courtyard between the outer and inner walls. It's a buffer zone between the dangerous internet and our sensitive internal network. Here, we typically host our public-facing services, like our web servers, email servers, and DNS servers. These services need to be accessible from the internet, but are isolated from our internal network. The Bastion host is designed to take attacks while protecting everything behind it. It's hardened against common threats like DDoS attacks, SQL injection, and cross-site scripting. By placing these heavily fortified systems in the DMZ, we create a strong first line of defense against attackers trying to reach our sensitive internal resources. In modern networks, we've evolved to micro-segmentation, especially in virtual environments. Imagine giving every single room in our castle its own set of guards and security roles. Each workload or application gets its own tiny secure environment with virtual firewalls. For example, your HR department's payroll system might be isolated from the marketing team's social media tools, even though they're on the same physical network. To implement modern network security, we use network overlays to create virtual networks on top of the physical ones, along with distributed firewalls for precise control and continuous monitoring. This follows the zero trust architecture model, where we never trust and always verify every single access request. Our users receive only the minimum permissions they need, and their trust is time-bound, requiring regular re-authentication. While these security approaches are powerful, organizations need to carefully balance them against performance impacts and manage the complexity of multiple security zones. Proxies play a vital role as intermediaries between networks. Forward proxies protect internal users by hiding their identity when accessing external resources, while reverse proxies add an extra security layer by protecting internal servers from external users. Working alongside these is the Network Address Translation, or NAC, and the Port Address Translation, or PAT, to provide additional security by masking internal network addresses from the outside world. For a fortress to function, it has to have reliable infrastructure. Let's look at the key components that keep our networks running smoothly and securely. We're talking about keeping our network infrastructure running reliably. At the heart of this is power redundancy. We need multiple layers of protection, starting with uninterruptible power supply, or UPS systems that kick in immediately if power fails, backed up by generators for longer outages. We also deploy redundant power distribution units, or PDUs, and ensure all of our critical equipment has dual power supplies. Take hospitals, for example. They typically maintain 3 separate power sources: direct power feeds, UPS systems, and emergency generators. Likewise, financial institutions often include redundant internet connections to guarantee continuous service. The environment around our equipment is just as crucial. We maintain precise temperature control through HVAC systems. We need to constantly monitor temperature and humidity levels to prevent hardware failures and install specialized fire suppression systems to protect our physical assets. And when issues do arise, we need clear response times defined in our SLAs. For example, with critical problems, we should expect a resolution within 15 to 30 minutes. Major issues might get a 1 to 2 hour window, while standard problems have 4 to 8 hours to resolve. These SLAs include specific penalties if these targets aren't met. Of course, proper maintenance prevents many problems before they ever start. We schedule regular maintenance during off-peak hours, follow strict change management procedures, and carefully assess the potential impact of any infrastructure changes before implementing them. Now let's explore the physical foundations of our network security, the transmission media that carries our data. Each type of cable has specific security characteristics and use cases that we need to understand. Let's start with coaxial cables, our traditional option that you might recognize from cable TV and internet connections. These offer good shielding against interference and are still widely used in building physical networks. Their thick copper core and shielding make them naturally resistant to EMI, For Ethernet connections, we have two choices. UTP, unshielded twisted pair, is cost-effective and commonly used in office environments, but it's susceptible to eavesdropping and electromagnetic interference, or EMI. That's why in industrial settings or areas with high electromagnetic activity, we use STP, or shielded twisted pair, which adds electromagnetic shielding for better security. At the top tier, we have fiber optic cables. These are the most secure and fastest option. They use light signals instead of electricity, making them virtually tap-proof. For different applications, we can choose between single-mode fiber for long distances like data center connections and multi-mode fiber for shorter runs within buildings. An interesting security feature of fiber is that any physical tampering typically causes signal loss, making intrusion attempts easier to detect. When it comes to physical security, protecting network infrastructure requires a comprehensive approach that's beyond basic cable protection. The first line of defense involves routing all network cables through secured pathways that are continuously monitored and access controlled. In exposed or vulnerable areas, we implement armored conduit systems to prevent physical tampering or damage. For our fiber optic infrastructure, we utilize specialized monitoring systems that can detect even the slightest attempts at cable manipulation or tapping. To maintain this security posture, we conduct regular physical security audits of all cable pathways, ensuring our protective measures remain effective in identifying any potential vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. While we're focusing on physical cables, it's worth noting that wireless transmission media brings their own security challenges. We'll cover those in detail when we talk about wireless security protocols. Now, before we dive into firewalls, let's review the key defensive elements that we've covered. We'll start with defense in depth. Think of a modern bank security system. They don't rely on just one protective measure. Instead, they combine physical security guards watching the premises, advanced access card systems controlling entry points, sophisticated vault encryption protecting assets, and comprehensive 24/7 monitoring systems tracking all activity. This layered strategy ensures that if one security measure fails, the others continue protecting the valuable assets. Now, speaking of protection strategies, a great defensive element is network segmentation. Hospitals are a great example of this approach. They typically divide their network into distinct segments, one highly secured section for sensitive patient records, another protected network specifically for medical devices, and a general network for administrative staff. This careful separation means that even if one area becomes compromised, the other critical systems remain secure. When it comes to perimeter security, we implement bastion hosts and DMZs as our buffer zones. These are like security checkpoints positioned between the open public internet and your sensitive internal network. Modern security has evolved to include microsegmentation. This is like having a dedicated security guard for every single room instead of just watching the building entrance. Think about this scenario. If you were securing a small e-commerce business, how would you implement defense in depth? Take a moment to think about what layers you would include. Of course, these defensive elements, while powerful, come with their own set of challenges. We need to carefully balance security measures with user accessibility, manage the overhead required to maintain multiple security layers, and ensure all our different security controls work together seamlessly. All of these defensive elements rely on robust infrastructure with reliable power and those secure transmission pathways we discussed earlier. The key is finding the right balance for your organization's specific needs. All right, we're moving into firewall technologies now. These are the bouncers of our network, checking individual packets and enforcing rules. There are a few different types to know. The first is packet filtering firewalls. These are simple and fast. They look at the headers for things like source IP, destination IP, ports, and decide yes or no based on ACLs. The next type are stateful packet filtering firewalls. These track connections like, oh, this packet is part of a chat I've seen before. We can let it through. They're smarter and still pretty quick. Then we have circuit-level proxy firewalls. Think SOC servers. They set up a session between client and server without peeking at the application data. This is good for hiding our network from prying eyes. Finally, we have application-level proxy firewalls. These are the geniuses. They dig into packet payloads, blocking specific content. But you need one for every service, and they're slow. Each of these firewalls work at different OSI layers. Packet at layer 3, stateful at 3 and 4, circuit at 5, and application at 7. The higher layers provide more brains and functionality, but this comes at the cost of speed. Now, CBAC is context-based access control. This filters both TCP and UDP packets based on session info, spotting things like DDoS attacks or tracking connection statistics to keep things in check. Now that we've covered the types of firewalls, let's explore how we set these up in firewall architectures. Now, how do we actually deploy our firewall defenses? We're going to start with the simplest and move up to more sophisticated setups. First, our packet filtering firewalls. Imagine a single router between your network and the internet. This is quick and budget-friendly, and perfect for small offices, but only offers basic protection. Think of a small medical clinic that just needs to protect patient records. Next, a dual-homed host steps things up. This is a computer with 2 network cards that understands all OSI layers. It's like having a security guard who checks both IDs and their behavior. It's great for a detailed inspection, but it can slow things down when traffic gets heavy. Universities often use these to protect research networks. Screened host architecture is where it gets interesting. A router filters traffic first, then a bastion host does deep inspection. It's like having a metal detector or router before the security guard or bastion host. Banks love this setup because it provides multiple layers of defense, though it does require more management. For serious security, there's screened subnet with a DMZ, sandwiched between 2 firewalls. Think of it as an airlock. Internet traffic lands in the DMZ first, and only approved data reaches your internal network. Sure, it's pricey, but you can use different firewall vendors to avoid shared vulnerabilities. This is what you may see in government facilities. A 3-legged firewall gives you 3 separate zones: internet, DMZ, and internal network. It's super flexible, like having different security levels for public areas, semi-restricted zones, and high security spaces in a building. E-commerce companies often use this to separate their web servers from payment systems. Now we're starting to see more virtual firewalls in cloud environments, where traditional physical boundaries don't exist. These provide the same protections, but in software form. This approach is perfect for companies running their systems in clouds like AWS or Azure. While firewalls are great at blocking threats, we still need more tools to spot incoming attacks. That's where IDS and IPS come in. Let's take a look at those next. Now, intrusion detection systems, or IDS, and intrusion prevention systems, or IPS, are 2 critical components of network security. Think of IDS as your security monitoring system, and IPS as your active defense system. Let's take a look at the key differences between IDS and IPS systems. An IDS acts as your network's security camera with smart analytics. It monitors your network traffic and alerts you when it spots any suspicious activity. Now, an IPS takes this a step further by taking action and is actively blocking threats in real time, like a security guard who can stop intruders before they cause damage. When it comes to the deployment of these systems, you'll find them in 2 main forms. First, we have network-based systems, known as NIDS or NIPS. They watch over entire network segments, monitoring all traffic that flows through. Then host-based systems, known as HIDS or HIPS, focus on protecting individual devices, keeping an eye on system, files, and processes. These systems use 2 primary methods to detect threats. The signature-based approach works a lot like antivirus software. matching traffic against known attack patterns. The anomaly-based method is more sophisticated. It uses machine learning to understand what's normal for your network and flags any unusual behavior. To protect your network effectively, these systems monitor several key indicators. They watch for connection state violations like TCP sequence anomalies, unusual traffic patterns such as sudden protocol spikes, statistical deviations in port usage or connection frequencies, and protocol violations where implementations don't follow the standard rules. The placement of these systems is crucial for their effectiveness. IDS systems typically connect to mirror or span ports, allowing them to monitor traffic without actually impacting the network flow. IPS systems, however, must be positioned inline since they can actively block threats. This inline placement requires careful implementation to avoid creating network bottlenecks. Best practices include monitoring both ingress or incoming and egress or outgoing traffic, implementing careful allow and deny lists, and regular tuning to minimize any false positives while maintaining security. Popular tools include Snort, Surcata, and commercial solutions from vendors like Cisco and Palo Alto Networks. Now, when these systems flag potential threats, we need a safe environment to analyze them, which brings us to our next topic, sandboxing. Now, sandboxes are isolated test environments that are designated to mimic production systems without any risk to your real infrastructure. Think of it like a quarantine zone where we can safely examine any suspicious code. Let's explore how organizations use these sandboxes. First, when our IDS flags suspicious files, we can safely run any code and analyze the files in this isolated environment. We also use sandboxes to test new security configurations without putting our production systems at risk. And when it comes to software updates, sandboxes let us evaluate patches thoroughly before rolling them out across the organization. Additionally, they provide a secure space to examine suspicious email attachments that might contain malware. When we're monitoring activity in our sandbox environment, there are 4 types of alerts we need to be aware of. A true positive is what we are hoping for. It means that we've successfully detected real malware. A true negative occurs when we correctly identify a clean file as safe. You won't receive an alert for true negative. Sometimes we'll get false positives, where legitimate files are incorrectly flagged as malicious. But the most concerning scenario is a false negative, where malware manages to slip through our detection systems unnoticed, and we miss it entirely. Here's the tricky part. Modern malware is getting smarter, often including sandbox evasion techniques. The malware might be programmed to check if they're running in a sandbox and hide their malicious behavior. This cat and mouse game leads us perfectly into our next topic, Honeypots and Honeynets, where instead of just analyzing threats, we actively try to trick attackers. Now, honeypots and honeynets are technical detective controls. Think of them as our network's undercover cops sniffing out trouble. These are sophisticated traps. A honeypot is a fake server, while a honeynet is a fake network, or 2 or more honeypots connected together in a network. Both are loaded with enticing bait that attracts attackers. There are 2 main types of honeypots we use in cybersecurity. First, we have low interaction honeypots, which provide limited services and are the safer option to run, though they might not feel as realistic to attackers. Then we have high interaction honeypots, which are complete systems that give us much better research data about attacker behavior. But this type requires more careful monitoring to prevent them from being used as a launching point for other attacks. So what kind of bait do we use? Fake customer databases, seemingly vulnerable web services, or even honey token credentials, like API keys that look real, but trigger alerts when they're used or accessed. We use these systems to learn about the attacker's techniques, distract them from our real assets, and spot sneaky threats like APTs, those advanced persistent threats that stick around for the long haul. Organizations typically monitor these traps using sophisticated logging systems and analysis tools to track every move attackers make. But here's the catch. If they're not locked down properly, attackers might use them to jump to our real systems. Now, we do have to be aware of the ethical and legal side of these tricks. While enticement or luring an attacker who is already inside our network is fine, entrapment, which is tricking someone who might not otherwise have committed a crime, is illegal. Now that we're done exploring these traps, let's shift gears to controlling who can get into our network in the first place. Now we're diving into Network Access Control, or NAC. Think of NAC as your network's strict security guard. It checks credentials, health status, and compliance before letting any device connect to your network. NAC comes in two main flavors, physical NAC and virtual NAC, and it's a crucial component of modern zero-trust architectures. A physical NAC operates at the hardware level, utilizing protocols like 802.1x for port-based access control. When you plug in an unauthorized device into a switch port, a physical NAC can automatically shut down or restrict that port. It integrates with authentication servers like Radius or TACACS Plus to verify device credentials. Virtual NAC takes security to the next level by performing sophisticated security posture assessments. When a device attempts to connect, it checks the device health status, including antivirus status, patch levels, and firewall configurations. It also verifies security compliance by examining encryption settings and password policies, and it validates authentication credentials like user identity and certificates. In enterprise environments, NAC serves multiple purposes. It manages BYOD, or bring your own device policies, by ensuring personal devices meet the security requirements. It controls guest access by providing limited network privileges to visitors, and it extends security policies to cloud resources. Let's think about an example. When an employee's laptop tries to connect to a large corporation's network, the NAC performs several checks. First, it verifies identity through 802.1x and Radius authentication. Then it confirms all required security software is running and up to date. Finally, it assesses the device's overall health and security status. If any issues are found, the device is automatically quarantined until problems are resolved. Now, organizations that are implementing NAC face several challenges. They must manage thousands of devices without impacting performance, integrate with existing security tools and SIM systems, and balance security requirements with productivity needs. To implement NAC successfully, organizations should follow several key practices, starting with clear security-aligned policies. Then roll out any changes gradually to minimize any disruptions. Establish incident response procedures for NAC alerts, and then regularly review and update policies to address emerging threats. So remember, NAC is your first line of defense. Physical NAC controls the physical ports. Virtual NAC enforces security policies. And together, they ensure only trusted devices access your network. Now, are you ready to learn about protecting those devices? Let's move on to endpoint security. First, what is an endpoint? This is any device that connects to your network, from employee workstations and smartphones to printers and IoT devices, and everything in between. These are often your most vulnerable points because they directly interact with users and the outside world. With the rise of remote work, protecting these endpoints has become more critical than ever. Endpoint security is all about arming these devices with a multi-layered defense system. Let's break down our security toolkit by function, starting with looking at how we prevent our security incidents on our endpoints. First, we have antivirus software that acts as our first line of defense, catching and blocking malware before it can do any damage. We also employ personal firewalls that act like bodyguards, carefully filtering both the incoming and outgoing traffic. For example, when a laptop's firewall detects suspicious connection attempts from unknown sources, it automatically blocks them. When it comes to detecting threats, we rely on endpoint protection platforms, or EPPs, as our next generation defenders. These sophisticated tools use artificial intelligence and behavior analysis to predict and detect threats before they become major problems. Imagine an EPP system detecting unusual file encryption activities that might indicate a ransomware attack in progress. Finally, we have our response tools. Data loss prevention, or DLP systems, serve as security checkpoints, ensuring sensitive data doesn't leave our endpoints without proper authorization. We also have automated incident response systems that can quickly quarantine compromised devices. Think of a situation where DLP catches and blocks an employee attempting to upload sensitive customer data to their personal cloud storage. That's exactly the kind of protection we need. Organizations tie this all together with comprehensive device management policies. Think encryption required or no outdated software allowed. Enforcement applications automatically check these security requirements. Now let me show you how endpoint security and NAC work together in a zero trust model. Think of it this way: NAC acts like a strict bouncer at a club, while endpoint security is your personal bodyguard. I'll explain this using an example of a remote worker's laptop. First, endpoint security continuously watches over the device. It makes sure the antivirus is always up to date and running. The firewall is filtering all network traffic. DLP systems are preventing any data leaks, and device encryption stays enabled. It's like having a security guard that never sleeps. Then, when that laptop tries to connect to the corporate network through a VPN, NAC steps in. It runs through a thorough security checklist, verifying all security tools are active and working, checking if the system has all of its patches, confirming encryption is turned on, and making sure all security policies are being followed. Only if everything checks out does NAC allow the connection to happen. Remember, endpoint security is your last line of defense. When paired with NAC in a zero trust approach, you've got a powerful security combination that can handle modern threats, from traditional malware to sophisticated targeted attacks. Now let's wrap this all up and summarize everything we've covered with exam objective 4.2, secure network components. We started with network architecture, exploring how defense in depth, segmentation, and properly secured cables work together to create a strong foundation. Then we discussed firewall technologies, from basic packet filtering all the way up to sophisticated application-level controls that manage network traffic flow. Moving on, we examined various firewall architectures, particularly focusing on screen subnets and how they help design our defensive perimeter. Then we explored IDS and IPS systems, which serve as our diligent watchers, detecting and stopping threats as they happen in real time. We also covered some specialized security tools like sandboxes for safely testing suspicious code, and honeypots and honeynets that act as sophisticated decoys to trick and track potential attackers. Network access control, or NAC, came next, serving as both physical and virtual security checkpoints that verify devices before granting network access. And finally, we discussed endpoint security, showing how antivirus software, firewalls, and endpoint protection platforms work together to shield our devices from threats. Remember, each of these components are crucial to the overall structure of our defense. They all work together like pieces of a puzzle to create a comprehensive, rock-solid network security strategy. Keep studying, keep learning, and always remember, security isn't a destination, but it's an ongoing journey. That's all we have today for exam objective 4.2. You're killing it on this CISSP journey. Keep that momentum going. If you need to revisit anything, no sweat. These recordings stay on YouTube, and I'll add chapters post-stream so you can jump to specific topics. Mastering this is a huge step on your CISSP path. These ideas will pop up again, so keep tying them to real-world scenarios. Stay curious, keep practicing. You're doing awesome. Now, who's ready for the after party? I'm heading over to our Study GRC Discord server's CISSP voice channel right now. It's perfect for questions, insights, and connecting with others in the community. If you're not in the Discord yet, you can visit cissp.britwhite.io for the Discord link. And don't forget to grab your CISSP role for full access to our study channels. Our next session will be Saturday, April 26th at 3 p.m. U.S. Central Time. We'll finish Domain 4 with secure communication channels. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Discord.